VikesNow. I am Dustin Baker, and we are on a full effective march to the NFL draft. We have 8 days away. And I said off air right before we hit the record button for Mr. Frey, these are the moments he lives for. The draft is his baby. So to set the table, this is Josh Frey's what he would do if he was the general manager draft. This has, I don't think, has any implication as to what will happen in 8 days, but if he was in charge with this roster, this is what he'd do. 1 week from now, a day before the draft, Josh is going to author his predictive mock draft, which means he's going to get inside Kwesi's head and figure out this is what I expect the Vikings to happen. A very long lead up, sir. How's the week for the draft treating you?
It's been good. It's been busy, but we're here. I'm enjoying it. This is, like you said, this is what I live for. This is what I do every single day, even if I'm not getting paid to do it. So,
Yeah, and you
um,
got you and you're thick in NBA playoffs as well, so that just has to enhance this time on the calendar.
oh yeah, trust me, I am just completely nervous for this Bucks game tonight. I desperately hoping they don't go down 0-2 to the Miami Heat, the 8 seed Miami Heat, which would suck. That would kind of ruin my week before the draft, but it's all right. It's all good. We're talking draft now. So yeah, just for this mock draft, I kind of I did what I wanted to do, but I did it within reason. So
Okay.
something that you could like kind of expect that the Vikings could do. Like if this was my ideal world or something, I'd have like Anthony Richardson falling to 23 and the
Yeah.
Vikings just scoop him up and figure out the rest later. But I obviously don't think that that's going to happen. So kind of went a little, I stayed a little bit more within reason with it.
Okay. Yeah, I think I've seen Levis a couple times fall to 23. That was like 2 weeks ago. I think that would be
Mm-hmm.
the one. Of course, Hendon Hooker should be there. Maybe he
Right.
won't, but Levis would be the one. If you're a Viking fan that doesn't want to spend the grocery list on draft assets, Levis could perhaps fall because of his immaturity. I don't think he will, but that would be the big like. All right, let's see if they get a quarterback at their spot. But yeah, so we've set the table in a grand way. Did you effectuate any, I guess, mention of a trade so that we know where the Vikings pick in round one, or did you just stay put?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to be trading down
Okay.
because I looked at it from this point of view. Like, if we look at this draft class as a whole, and we've talked about this a lot, I don't think that there's a lot of guys that you can say or you can plug in even in the first round and say this is going to be the top player at this position for this draft class
Mhm.
on a roster. Like we could say that 2020 Justin Jefferson, obviously it took him a little bit to get going, but once he got going, he was the top guy in that wide receiver room. Christian Darrisaw, if he stayed healthy and Mike Zimmer was a little bit less of a stickler with rookies, he
Mhm.
probably would have been left tackle right away. This year, I don't think that that's necessarily going to be the case. So looking at that and just how many needs that the Vikings have, I opt to trade down
Okay.
from 23. And in my ideal world, that trade would be with the Houston Texans. I don't
Okay.
necessarily know if they'd take that trade, but I'm going the Texans get 23. They move up to get maybe a corner, maybe a wide receiver, whatever they have left. And I think that's realistic for them because they have so much draft capital over the next couple of
Yeah.
years, and they do have a ton of needs all over their roster, especially if they go get a young quarterback at the top of this draft. So I think that that's a realistic thing for them to do. But I have them taking 23, and in exchange, the Vikings get number 33 and number 65 at the very beginning of the second and the third rounds.
Okay. And that probably should be somewhat fair on the draft calculators, both of them, or whatever
Yep.
one you use. Okay, cool. All
Yeah.
right. And then to piggyback, before you announce the first pick, Brandon Bean from Buffalo Bills said either today or yesterday that I think he implied it was astounding how many guys in the first round don't necessarily have a first round grade. So I think what we've seen over the last 2 weeks is a steady pumping of the brakes that, and you said this before the rest, that you're not going to have your Sauce Gardner or your guaranteed Darisaw right away. And I think we've been spoiled by these guys coming in like Kyle Hamilton, boom, PFF's best safety on the planet. It's like, really? Like, how did that
Mm-hmm.
happen? So I think that it's safe to assume that doesn't happen every year and we might be spoiled. So therefore, no further ado, the Vikings trade down with the Texans, stockpile later round first pick. I don't remember which number he said, and then the 60 something pick. So who is the first pick?
Yeah, so I went back and forth with three positions here: corner, wide receiver, linebacker. And I think at the end of the day, a wide receiver would be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Like you get a guy, you pair him with Justin Jefferson, KJ Osborne, TJ Hawkinson, and you just watch the offense go and score 30 a game and look absolutely incredible. But on the flip side, is it still worth it for that if, say, God forbid, there's a Jordan Hicks injury and Troy dies in the starting lineup all of a sudden for an extended period of time? Or Andrew Booth, Caleb Evans, they get hurt again, and we are basically at the bottom of the Vikings depth chart right now in terms of corners. So is it still worth it for the Vikings offense to be that good while the defense is still a unit that's going to give up 30 a game? And maybe we're looking at another situation like last year where they might get lucky and win a few of these games, but are they really going to be a dominant force in the NFL? It's questionable that they'd be able to do that. So ultimately, 33, I landed on Calais Ringo out of Georgia. I think that he makes a lot of sense. Boundary corner that stayed healthy throughout his 2 years as a starter, which I think would be something that the Vikings secondary just hasn't had over the past couple seasons, especially. And he has some work to do in terms of development, but he has all the traits in terms of size, athleticism, ball skills. He's got it all. He just needs to put it all together. And I think that makes a lot of sense for the Vikings at 33.
And he is from Georgia, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
yeah.
So that continues the Lewis Cine theme of the first pick of the event for Kwesi. And that's one thing last year is that Kwesi seemed to love big schools. Every single draft pick came from a state school or Clemson. There wasn't any any smaller like Jackson State or Appalachian State. It seemed like he liked dudes that, are in the top 25.
So the Power 5 conferences.
Yeah, there you go. All right, so in the first pick in the second round, so we have to sleep on it, huh? To get
exactly.
To get Ringo. Yeah, that sounds like a Kwesi Vikings thing. All right, so that I wrote an article about 10 minutes ago on Vikings territory. I saw some smoke out there that said, does Juwan Williams to the Vikings make it so they don't need a cornerback anymore? I'm like, what are we doing, people? The guy has started one game. It's great that he was a second rounder, and he's not going to be Duke Shelley. If he is, I'll be the first guy to start the parade. But no, that is a depth signing. It shouldn't wipe Deonte Banks off your boards, and for you, it did not. So it's Calais Ringo in round 2, and that means they have an additional second round pick. So we're setting up for a very exciting start to Friday night. Who is I think your next guy's a second rounder, right?
It's the second pick in the third round.
Okay.
So
all right.
we have to wait a little bit, but yeah.
All right. Who is it?
It's at 65. I think that's when you go with that linebacker spot. I think that's another position where you desperately need some more depth, especially if I hope Brian Asamoah works out, obviously. But I do feel like we've kind of anointed him without really seeing what he can truly do at the end. Yeah. And then if Jordan Hicks, God forbid, he's age 30, getting up there, if he suffers an injury and has to miss a few weeks, do we really want to see Troy Dye step in there?
Yeah, it's either Reader, it's a Troy, it's a Reader or Dye.
Exactly, yeah. And I'm not super sold on either one of them. So I think that with that 65th pick, I'd opt to go Noah Sewell. Okay. Obviously, if a Trenton Simpson or a Jack Campbell, Drew Sanders falls that far, I'd go with them. But staying within the realms of reality, I don't think that they're going to fall that far. Obviously, linebacker position is weird, and a lot of weird things happen at that spot, so somebody could fall. But play it safe, I'd go Noah Sewell. I think he's got all the traits again. Needs a little bit of work. He's got the build of a linebacker. He needs to put it all together. He's a prospect that's going to need a lot of work, but I think he's got starting potential in him. And Rick Spielman actually listed him, I think it was either yesterday or Monday, as one of his boomer bust prospects in this draft. So take that as you will.
Yep. As long as it's not a quarterback coming from Rick's mouth, we trust it.
Exactly. Yep, there you go.
That's the mantra. All right. So a linebacker to hedge the bet of what I consider a Hicks or an Asamoah injury. And you're absolutely correct that we have anointed Asamoah the next big thing. I think it's because the roster depth at linebacker is so skimpy and skinny that Asamoah has to be the starter. And we assume that because he's freakishly athletic, he had a couple sweet forced fumbles. One of them wasn't even counted. We think he's going to be that good. So I think beyond the shadow of a doubt, unless they get Trenton Simpson or Jack Campbell, that Asamoah will be a starter. And even if they do get one of them, it'll probably be Asamoah in that guy. On the other hand, if one of them gets hurt, then yeah, we're down to a Troy. And it seems weird that Brian Flores, with his linebacker background, just really wouldn't give a shit who his linebackers are. Right. So I agree. I think when I get to my second pick, when I do the same thing that you're doing right now, it will probably be a linebacker. But what do you got for the next part of round 3, the Hawkinson pick, I think?
Yeah, I think I think this is when you turn over to the offensive side of the ball and
Okay.
then you shore up some of the needs over there. There's an argument to be made for quarterback. I don't necessarily know if there's a great one right now for a quarterback in day 2. But with this pick, I'd go wide receiver. I think there's going to be a decent amount of guys in this class where you're not going to see like 1,000-yard seasons out of these guys right away.
Mm-hmm.
But if a guy like KJ Osborne were to miss a couple weeks, or Justin Jefferson missed a week or two, I think these are guys that you could plug in and feel comfortable playing for at least a couple weeks and get some production out of them.
Mm-hmm.
In my ideal world, I'd get Tank Dell out of Houston. I think,
You've
yeah.
stayed loyal the whole
I
time.
I absolutely love this guy. I think there's a chance that he goes a little bit earlier than this. But out of the slot, you're not going to get much better. He's quick on his feet. He knows how to run routes. And unlike a lot of slot guys in college, especially where you see him make the basket body catches, he doesn't do that. He goes up and grabs the ball. He's got strong hands. He knows what he's doing, and he's super athletic. I love him. I think he's going to be one of the better prospects out of this wide receiver class. So if he's there at 87, I'm picking him.
Oh man, if that happens, I can't wait to text you because you've been first you were on Simpson. That was your
Yeah.
guy. And I mean, that was kind of obvious because he looks so good in Simpson, but
Mm-hmm.
then because he's an off-ball linebacker, kind of like running backs, they're like, yeah, do we really need one? We'll just
Right.
get him later. But yeah, you've remained faithful to Dell. I think what the type that not necessarily for Dell's the way he plays, but what you would want from somebody in that spot at wide receiver is kind of the progression from Darnell Mooney where
Exactly.
yeah, where he is good. You don't really know how good he really is because it's Bears quarterbacks throwing, but somehow he's still guaranteed 500 to 1,000 yards. If we're picking in this spot and it's not Jackson Smith and Jiba, then I think that would be the progression. If Jefferson tweaks a hamstring week 2, you have Osborne, Dell, and Hawkinson. And we already know because of Kirk Cousins' body of work with the Commanders that he can make it work with wide receivers who are just decent. He doesn't need
Mm-hmm.
Justin Jefferson to throw 4,000 yards. Now, of course, Jefferson's probably the guy to get you to 13-4 rather than 9-8.
Exactly. Yeah.
But we digress. All right. So I think you have 3 picks left unless you did more trades. Who would be your 4th rounder?
Yeah, so at number 119,
Mm-hmm.
I stayed on the offensive side. I think this is a sneaky need for the Vikings in this class, especially looking at what happened last year. I went interior offensive line
Oh, okay.
because I think if you look at what happened, the Vikings were quietly like an Ezra Cleveland or an Ed Ingram injury away from just complete disaster on the interior offensive line. They were down to like the very bottom of the depth chart in that spot. And I think you need to find a guy that's versatile, can play multiple positions, has experience. And that's Andrew Voorhees out of USC. I think he falls this far because he was projected to be a top 100 pick for a lot of this process. Mm-hmm. But after he suffered his injury at the combine, torn ACL, probably not going to play a ton in 2023, if at all. So he's probably not going to look at a ton of immediate production. But he's a guy down the road. He's got 5 years of starting experience. He's played right guard, left tackle. He's played all of them. He knows what he's doing at all of them. He played very well for the Trojans. And if you want to find a depth piece in round 4 at a sneaky need like the offensive line, where the Vikings could see a lot of turnover in the next couple of years, you don't know what's happening with Cleveland. If Bradbury has a bust of a year, he goes back down to what we see 2019, 2020, then maybe they decide to just cut him, and you need a center all of a sudden. Mm-hmm. So I think Voorhees is a very realistic choice here.
Yeah, I think it hedges 2 bets. If Ed Ingram shows up to probably the first month or 2 of the season and looks like the 55 PFF guy that steps on everybody's toes, literally, then you'd be like, all right, well, you swung and missed in the draft, Kwesi on this guy, but now you've got Voorhees if you need to fill in. Or I don't know how much money Cleveland's going to ask for, but that's another sneaky talker is that he's going to want a contract. And he's a pretty good guard, which you'd think that we would pay millions because we had such putrid guard play. But now that we have an offensive-minded head coach and coaching staff, maybe you can get away with not paying Ezra Cleveland blah, blah, blah million per year. I don't even know what he's going to ask. So I like the unsung variety of your pick here because, we're Vikings fans since arguably especially since 2018, but probably before that, every offseason besides this one, we're talking about how are we going to fix this damn offensive line.
Right.
So getting more bodies in the room, especially at a reasonable spot in the draft, not the first round center from 2019, damn it. Yeah, I like it. All right, I think you got two more. This would be the Tyler Conklin compensatory pick at 5th round.
Yep, 5th round. I think it's number 158, somewhere around there.
Okay.
With this one, once we get into this point of the draft, we're kind of just taking flyers on
Yeah.
guys that could turn into something. So this is where I'm going with QB. Like if somebody falls,
Ooh,
obviously my guy throughout this entire
here we
process
go.
has been Clayton Tune.
Drum roll, and he nailed it.
Another Houston guy. I think he's I put him 5th in my QB rankings last week above Hendon Hooker. I think he's that good, or at least can be that good. A little bit of concerns with considering that he ran an air raid offense at Houston, but again, he has multiple years of starting experience. He stayed healthy. When he had to read through some progressions, he was able to do it, and he's mobile enough to work off and just extend some plays when he has to, when stuff breaks down. So I think that this is a really good choice. I wouldn't be mad at a guy like Jaron Hall or Dorian Thompson-Robinson in this spot either, just because like they've kind of fit into the same mold, multiple years of starting experience, stayed healthy, they know what they're doing. So I wouldn't be mad at any of those three, but again, I'm going to stay loyal to my guys. I'm going Clayton Tune here.
Okay, and then if Cousins' contract stays as is, do you think we would see enough from Tune in the preseason and just in the building that we would start to get ready for him as the guy, or is he just a certain quarterback to have in the building while what you're really doing is getting ready for the 2024 draft to make your move?
Yeah, I'd be a little bit wary about throwing him right into the starting lineup in 2024, just because again, once you get past these top 4, I think I think all of these guys have a ton of development that they still have to do, and a lot of them haven't really run NFL offense or NFL type offenses throughout their college careers. That's just how their programs have been operating for many years now. So I think that you've got a lot of work to do with all of them. So I'd be wary about 2024. But in a pinch, if you're looking to do a bridge quarterback or for a bridge quarterback spot, and 2024 is the time where Kwesi's like, all right, we're going all in we're turning this roster around. We're overloading everything. And we're going to go try to get one of these. Maybe we go try to get one of these top guys in 2024 at the QB spot, like a Drake May, Caleb Williams. I don't know if those necessarily are going to be the guys that you're targeting, or if you can even get that high. But I do think that there's a chance that we could see a little bit of Tune after Cousins leaves.
When you used to, I don't know how long ago, maybe 10 years ago, when you used to attach the air raid offense adjectives to a quarterback, that sounded badass because it sounded like a quarterback who knew how to fling it. But after you've seen some of those guys not really work out, it's like, oh, are they really ready? What do you think before we get to your final pick? I also wrote on Vikings territory today that if CJ Stroud is the guy, and this is per Vegas odds, this isn't just some schmoes mock draft. Stroud seems to be tumbling a bit, whereas it's a foregone effing conclusion that Bryce Young is the first overall pick now. And then at number 2, I guess somehow Levis has weaseled his face back in there. Cardinals don't need a quarterback. Who knows what the rest will do? If Stroud gets down to 5 or 6, would you be flabbergasted if the Vikings go get him?
I wouldn't be flabbergasted by it. I think you'd have to give up a lot, especially considering all the other teams that are probably looking at quarterbacks, like Tennessee, Tampa, even Las Vegas could still be looking at a young quarterback in this draft. So maybe they try to go get him. But I think if Stroud were the guy that starts falling, I think that there's a higher chance that a lot of these teams are going to go try to get him.
Okay.
But if the Vikings end up going and getting CJ Stroud, I don't know how much better he is than Kirk Cousins, but at the very least, he's going to be a lot cheaper than Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
So,
can you imagine the hell we'll go through when Cousins has his first interception or bad Kirk game of the year?
Oh God!
Oh my God! Wait. It's like if it comes as early as the Eagles game did last year, where nothing went right, Cousins looked like shit. That's all we're gonna talk about for 7 straight days. Is it time to put Stroud in the lineup? And
for sure.
I mean, that might even be the case if it's Clayton Tune on the roster. So, but it'll be exacerbated if it's Stroud. All right. So the Stroud thing is still intriguing. I thought about this when you had to crawl up to 3 to get him, when Anthony Richardson might have been the first overall pick. But I think the Draft Network, Justin Mello, in his mock draft this morning had the Vikings trading up to 3 to get Will Levis, which is
I don't do that.
Yeah,
No.
what are we doing? But the price was 2 firsts, a third, and Daniil Hunter. And I'm under the impression that you can't trade Hunter right now easily because of his contract. So I'm guessing that Justin didn't know that, but that happens. But yeah, if you're gonna trade the farm, you might as well get Stroud, who, like I just tweeted a little while ago, he's not weird with mayonnaise and coffee. He's not immature. He's not tiny like Bryce, and he's not old and geriatric like Hooker. Like, this should be the guy that we get in on if the Vikings, and we have no way of knowing for the next 8 days if they're going to actually splash for this quarterback. But Stroud would certainly, it sounds like yours too, because they can't get Bryce Young. That would be your guy.
Yeah, for sure. I think if there's a guy behind Bryce Young that probably has at the very least the highest floor in this class, where he's not going to be a bust.
Yeah,
I think it's Stroud, where you can plug him into an offense. He's going to know what he's doing. He can make the right throws. He's probably not going to be super mobile, although we did see a little bit of it in the Georgia game. So maybe it's an untapped wrinkle in his potential that we could explore in Minnesota. Maybe Kevin O'Connell has a few things that he could throw in there with his scheme. But you get him with a wide receiver like Jefferson and tight end like Hawkinson. It's like he's going to be running his Ohio State offense again. He's got some of the top playmakers in the league. He's got a couple of the best tackles in the league. Like, he's going to be like, nothing's changed. It's going to be actually actually making the game slow down, like what Justin Fields said, but don't really know if it actually slowed down for him.
No, it didn't. No, that was lies. I'll tell you that. Yep. Okay, so I think we're to your 6th rounder, which would be the final pick for the Vikings. And I'm assuming, and you're assuming, that there'll probably be a lot of trades in the middle and they'll end up with 8 picks. But how on the earth do you try to forecast every single one of those? So hit me with our version of Mr. Irrelevant.
Yeah. So round 6, I kind of went back into the secondary again because I don't think they have enough depth there. Like, even if one of these guys, Andrew Booth, Caleb Evans, Tate Gowan, one of those guys hits, and I highly doubt that all 3 of them will hit. So I think that just puts exactly. So I just think you need to put the onus on that area. And a guy that has been a little bit under the radar, but the Vikings have visited with him, USC again, Mekhi Blackman. Transferred. I think it was from Tulsa, 2022. And then he just had a great season for USC. He was targeted 63 times, allowed 30 receptions, opposing passer rating of look it up here. Opposing passer rating of 46.1 for USC, which, like, that I'll take that all day long if he can continue to do that sort of production. Like, that's just great, and that's just gravy on top of everything else. And get him in the 6th round, the guy that's been connected to the Vikings throughout this process. So get him there. I think that's a good spot.
One not related to him, but I was, Player Profiler. I'm sure you know about that website. I was looking at all of the probably 20 dudes that could land in the Vikings lap, reasonably speaking. That's how many can really realistically go to the Vikings. It's weird that there's that many. And they have, on most players, they have player comps. And I got down to like the 18th on my list, which was Cam Smith. And it was like, oh yeah, that's Sauce Gardner. And I'm like, oh really? Is that is that what we're doing? We can get him at the top of the 2nd round. Why don't we just do that? So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they do that based on measurables or.
I think so. Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, well, if they're right, we've got diamond in the rough here. All right, sir. So you and I and Yannick Eckhart have an off-air draft call late Friday night, 2 a.m, to officially come up with our Vikings predictions. It'll be a fun time. We'll look forward to seeing you then. But that will be your opportunity to really get ready for your writings the final week, your predictions, because these guys and gals that watch, what they're really here for is to see if you can get it right. They want to see that you're credible, blah, blah, blah. So I look forward to talking to you then. But next time on air, you'll get on in this seat with Giannis to your back and Dalvin Cook / Brian Asamoah to the other side to give us your predictions. Anything else, sir?
That's about it, man. Go Bucks tonight. Hope we get a dub.
Yeah, I want your panic level to reduce because, if you go, I think it probably needs to be at least 2-2 by the time the NFL draft happens for you to be somewhat at ease in this playoff series.
Oh yeah, if it's 2-2 or 3-1, hopefully, by the time the NFL draft rolls around, I'll be sitting fine. But if it's the other side, 3-1 Miami, or we're out, then well, if we're out, then I'll probably just go full into the draft because I've got just nothing else. But yeah, hopefully it's at least 2-2 by then.
Oh yeah, if there was a sweep, I don't know how. First of all, our little dabble into NBA predictions on our website
Oh,
will
it'd
look
be
like,
terrible.
yeah, we'll never do that again. And then you'll
Yeah,
probably won't even show up for the draft call if they're down.
exactly.
By that time, it'll be 0-2, and we'll be like, well, I guess Josh is here in spirit. So, all right,
Yeah.
man, we'll talk to you. We'll talk to you in a couple days. The rest of the group will see you in 1 week. Okay.
Sounds good, man. See
All
you
right,
then.
let's go later.